I'm Bae.
And I'm Morgan, and we are the Body Acceptance Babes.
This is the podcast where we talk about how to accept the body you have, let go of societal expectations to change the way you look, and to just be who you were born to be from the inside out.
You'll hear about how we embrace body neutrality, reject diet culture, and learn how you can too. Now on with the show. Hey, Bae, how are you?
Hey, Morgan. Hello, all the listeners.
Hello. We're so excited.
We're so excited to be here. Thank you for tuning in to our intro episode of the
Woot.
Body Acceptance Babes podcast. Whoop, whoop,
Yay!
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is so exciting for us.
It's so exciting. Something we are both so passionate about, and we are so excited to share with you. Something
That's
that
right.
I definitely feel like is becoming more and more common in the media, where it wasn't when we were growing up.
Yes, yeah, I definitely feel like things are starting to potentially lean into the direction of body acceptance, body neutrality, and all that. And I am really excited that we get to be a part of it. I think that's really awesome.
I actually yesterday saw a Winners commercial where there is not like, she's not necessarily full figured, but she's not like a stick thin model, and she's wearing a bodycon dress, and I was like, yes, let's normalize this.
Yeah, we're starting to get that there. Like that's I mean, even just with, you know, some celebrities too, like Lizzo and whatnot, speaking out about stuff like that, it's really starting to change the narrative, which is awesome. So
yeah,
at least I'm excited about it.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Like, I really feel like things would have been different for us growing up had we had this representation when we were younger.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are making this podcast, is so that other people have the opportunity to have what we couldn't have, what we didn't have, just because I guess our society at the time wasn't there yet. So
yeah, because
like it wasn't even a little thought in the universe, I don't think, at that time, or not as much.
No, fat people were made fun of. Like,
Yeah.
I remember growing up watching Friends, and they made fun of Monica when she was younger because of her size. And I feel like there are so many reasons why people are different body sizes, and there actually don't even need a reason for your body being whatever size it is. And I feel like it's not acceptable to poke fun at someone's appearance in any way. But it was common.
It was. And I think it's the realization now that bodies come in all shapes and sizes wasn't a realization then. If you were in a bigger body, you were considered unhealthy. That's it. End of story. Like, you know what I mean? Whereas now we're learning more about that's not necessarily true. That health and body size aren't one and the same. So, and I think that's I think one of the reasons why, learning that our society is starting to, I will say there's still a lot of diet culture out there, but starting to move away.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely, it's definitely more prevalent in culture, and seeing more full-figured people in movies and TV, and it's a more accurate representation of real life. Because like the average size in North America is like a size 14 or 16, and like it's not represented in the media at all. No,
not at all. I mean, there are other things that absolutely need representation too, like LGBTQ plus community, Black community. Like there needs to be more representation there too. But definitely, but since we're just kind of talking about body acceptance, there needs to be representation of all shapes and sizes, and we're not discounting people who I would say are in a smaller body naturally, and that's who they are, and that's who you know, the universe made them as, or God created them as, and like that's something to recognize too, that we're not, you know, I guess putting down thin people, but it's just that the recognizing that all different types exist and that all different types are okay and good and fine and and should be accepted in our society.
Yes, so absolutely. All bodies are perfect as they are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
End of sentence. Podcast is over.
yeah, and that's the end of the fun. Yeah. But because of the past societal, I guess, expectations that we are now trying to break through, it can be hard for a lot of people still, in this day and age, to accept their bodies and to embrace body neutrality, embrace who they are. And that's why we're here. We're here to help people get there and help people do that, and kind of also share our own stories and our own journeys, as well. Because we're not 100%, experts either. We're just on this journey, right?
Yeah.
So
I would say I would say I've come a really long way, but I'm still not.
Nope.
I still look in the mirror and poke at myself or have thoughts. The diet culture is so ingrained in our society. Yeah. It's hard to break away from that. It takes time.
Mm-hmm, for sure, definitely. And while there's a movement to do that, we're still, it almost feels like we're fighting against the old societal views, but they're still strong, and they're still strong in a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, that means for us that we need to really, kind of learn how to let go of that, right? That's a huge piece. And I know I can speak from my own experience that I'm a lot happier now that I've let go of that. So that should be a goal, right? For just to be happy, right? So
yeah. Actually, the other day I was in a Facebook group and it asked, "Are you happy?" And for the first time in my life, it was on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you in your life? And I put 10. And it was the first thought that came to my head. Yeah. Whereas my whole life, I've been no, probably a 7. I could be skinnier, or you know what I mean? I could be doing this or I could be doing that. But it was the first thought. I was I'm a 10. And then the girl who runs a Facebook group, she was queen. And
it's true though, but it's but that comes from a place of a lot of work you've probably done on yourself, a lot of, you know what I mean?
Yes.
A lot of learning, a lot of growing, a lot of that kind of, and I can relate to that as well. I'm up there too in terms of happiness now. And because I knew we were recording today, in the car this morning on the way home from dropping my daughter off, I was thinking about what it was like to be in a smaller body in the middle of my eating disorder ways, which I'll talk about more later. But and I remember thinking how unhappy I was compared to how happy I am now, and how just even just settled in my own body I am now, compared to, you'd think that being closer to the size that society expects of you would make you happier, but it actually did the exact opposite. Same. It made me miserable. So because you had to try to maintain that, and it was just it's not realistic. So that was where the unhappiness came. But yeah, I was thinking that too on the way home. I was I'm pumped to talk about this today. I'm so much happier now, accepting my body and who I am than I was. So yeah.
Yes. And that's what we hope for all of you. If you are not in a place where you accept yourself or you love yourself, I know for me, that's something I struggled with my entire life. I can 100% say that I never used to love myself, and I can say that now I do. And that's one of the pieces I feel in the body acceptance journey, is just loving yourself for who you are and accepting all parts of you, even more than physical, mental and spiritual. And
it's so interesting you say that, because in the notes I wrote for this, I actually talk about self-love as being a huge part of it. So that was so interesting how we're totally on the same page with that. But it's loving all parts of yourself, and I think body acceptance comes with self-love, right? If you're in the throes of an eating disorder, how much are you loving yourself in that moment, right?
Exactly.
So and it can be hard. It can be hard to get out of that don't, like, I fully understand that. But yeah,
Absolutely.
it's but yeah, it's definitely, there are 1,000%. I agree. Like, I'm nodding as you, I was nodding as you were talking earlier, but like, you can't see it on the podcast, but I was going, yep, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So awesome. So I don't know if you want to share some of your story first, and we can share our stories, and then maybe the folks listening in can find us more relatable, can, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, be like, oh, like, that's where they're coming from, like that kind of thing. So
Yeah. Let's give you guys a deep dive into, well, maybe not a deep dive because we're trying to keep these episodes reasonably length.
yes.
But let's tell you about ourselves. So, hi,
Yeah.
I'm Bae.
Hi, Bae.
I was not born as Bae. I was born as Beverly. And that is part of my self-love journey, is that I've hated that name my entire life. And it wasn't until a couple years ago that I claimed my power and decided that I'm changing my name to Bae. And that's that. So that was actually a big thing in my shift to loving myself, was accepting that I didn't like that name, and that's okay. And that I can change that about myself, and that's okay. And that in our life, we get to choose how we view ourselves. And if I didn't love what I was being called, how can I love the rest of myself? So, but growing up was a big struggle, size-wise. I feel like most of my life I've been struggling with what I look like. I remember being on the playground in grade 2 and people asking how big I was, like how much I weighed, because I didn't like fit properly in the swings. And like,
oh, that's awful. I'm so sorry.
and it's hard too, because like kids are hard on each other, like really, and they're
kids
so
are
brutally
awful.
honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids are horrible. There's a thing in one of my parenting groups where we say kids are assholes, and that's true.
It's true. And they don't have that social filter where they know like what's okay to say and what's not okay.
Yes.
Because I have another memory also, I think from grade 2, although like my younger years I think I've blocked from my brain because of all the teasing and the, you know, childhood trauma. But I remember a kid being like, oh my God, you're so fat. And like, I did not know how to handle that, because it's just what size I was. And I feel like, and I feel
when
like
when you're in grade 2, you're 7, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
That's young.
Yeah. So like, and growing up, my mother was overweight, or I don't really like that word, overweight. But for context, now all the listeners know what I mean. And she was always on a diet. She was always trying to change her body. And when you're a kid, you're mostly influenced by your parents because you're around your parents. And my peers were all small, and my mom wasn't, and she was on a diet. So I was always on a diet, and I was always trying to look like my peers and change who I was. Like, as literally as long as I can remember, I've been on a diet. I don't remember never not being on a diet. And I remember doing like extreme things in high school. Like, I'm not going to hang out with anybody for a month and then come back with this huge transformation. And just, it's like,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. It was like extreme. My disordered eating behavior was extreme exercise and food restriction. Because it's almost like, it's like the no pain, no gain attitude, where it's like you have to beat your body up in order to get what you need, because you need to like beat your body into submission almost. Like,
yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And everyone's almost like, oh, you are fat, therefore you overeat, therefore you eat out too much, therefore blah, blah, blah. So my extreme was like, I'm only eating vegetables and I'm only eating one food group at a time. And like, then my body can digest it faster. And the faster it can get out of me, the faster I'm going to lose weight and blah, 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 blah. And like, I did lose 60 pounds in like 3 months from like, I was like running and like eating that way. And like, I remember thinking that I would be happy and like at the time feeling happy because I was like, oh my gosh, I finally was able to like lose this weight. But then slowly it started like coming back. And then it was like those extreme behaviors again, like, oh, well, I just got to push myself harder. Oh, I got to just restrict more, and like being hungry all the time. And like I blacked out from lack of nutrition and like lack of, I don't know, my body had nothing. And like I blacked out from all of this, like at school. Like I was in university when this happened. And so like I remember blacking out and coming to and being like, wow, I'm in class. Like what the hell just happened?
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's your body giving you, it's your body talking to you basically when that happens, right? Saying like, I'm needing some things that I'm not getting.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember too, like being really hard on myself because all my peers were dating. From like grade 8, I feel like people were like dating. Yeah. And I didn't have
the hot spot. No kidding.
Yeah, there was the hot spot where they were all making out. There was a place
where we used to go and hang out at the hot spot. Yeah, that's literally what it was called. It sounds ridiculous now, but
But I remember thinking, I can't get a boyfriend because I'm fat. Like I remember thinking that, and like I didn't have a boyfriend until I was done high school, and I always thought it was because I was fat. And I remember saying to myself, I'm not going to meet the person I'm supposed to be with until I'm done losing weight. And I remember thinking recently that because now I'm married to the most wonderful man that I've ever been with, and and I remember thinking recently that I actually am done losing weight because weight loss is not, like, my body is allowed to do whatever my body needs to do, whether that is gaining weight or whether that is losing weight. And like, that is the point that
you're done losing weight because you're rejecting diet culture.
Exactly. So that's like
amazing.
That's my like weight journey in a nutshell. And that's like, I was always beating up on myself because of my body size. And I never accepted the body I was in, because even when I was at my smallest, I was always like, I can do more. And my body kind of plateaued after I lost the 60 pounds and I couldn't lose any more weight. And then I was like, well, whatever. And I think I stayed at that weight for a couple of years, but then I just started creeping up like a couple pounds a year kind of thing. And I also like what I was doing was not sustainable because my body literally was not getting nutrients it needed. And also like, it's unrealistic to do all that kind of exercise every single day. Like it's maybe it's realistic if you're single, if you're like going dancing all the time and like, you know, like maybe the exercise is sustainable in that sense, but it's not
like
realistic.
Unless you're a professional athlete, but then even they would have a strict nutrition plan that would give them enough fuel to do that exercise. You know what I mean? Like they're not starving themselves and you know what I mean? And doing that exercise. They're eating extra calories so that they can do that exercise. Yeah. And maintain their, you know what I mean?
You're so right. But diet culture teaches us that we should restrict calories and exercise a lot. But if you look at professional athletes, it's not sustainable.
Yeah. They're not going, it's not sustainable because they wouldn't win things. They wouldn't be strong enough to do the things because your body needs fuel, right? So
yeah, exactly.
That was just something I thought of at the top of my head.
Yeah, but you're so right. But it's not, it goes against diet culture. Therefore, it's not something people talk about as being normal in society.
Yes, no, for sure. Definitely. No, definitely. It's not, unsustainability is one of the biggest reasons why I believe in body acceptance and body neutrality and accepting that all bodies are different and all bodies come in all shapes and sizes, because I have a similar story. Like I have a very similar story. I don't know, would you like to elaborate on your story before I go into mine, or like where do you feel?
I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
So during my whole journey of losing weight and being at my smallest, I studied nutritional therapy, which really talks about how you can use nutrients as like superfoods, and like what's better for you and what's not better for you and everything. And I truly believed that for a very long time, is that what you put in your body is, you should honor your body, and you should only put clean foods in your body.
Clean.
And like, eating clean.
As opposed to dirty foods?
Yeah, as opposed to food with dirt on it.
Yeah.
And eating clean. And I even considered going to school to learn personal training to help other people, because I truly believed that weight correlated with health. I truly believed that. And I studied so much, not only with the nutritional therapy, but following other doctors who believed the same thing, and believing that, well, if these doctors believe it, then therefore it must be true, and therefore this is what everyone should be doing, and blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't until that was a huge part, over 10 years of my life. I believed this and studied this, and I wouldn't listen to any other ways of thinking. I was like, nope, that's totally wrong. I went to school for this. I know what I'm talking about, blah, blah, blah. And then when I read intuitive eating, because you recommended intuitive eating, and I read intuitive eating, and I was like, oh my God, this makes sense. Because despite eating clean, air quotes, clean, despite all the nutritional stuff, I was eating a salad every day for lunch. Despite all of that, I was still gaining weight. And that's when I started to like open my mind to like, maybe it's not true what they're telling us. Maybe it's different. And then reading intuitive eating and opening up my mind and reading Health at Every Size and like all these other resources that talk about listening to your body. And then I was also in a spiritual journey of listening to your body. And when I realized that your body can actually like, your body knows from childhood what you should be eating, how much you should be eating. You know, those celebrities on TV don't know, but your body knows what's right for you. And everybody is individual and everybody is different. And honoring and respecting that completely, I threw away all of those books, all that money I spent on all those doctors' books and recipe books and all that. I got rid of, I donated them. I donated all of it. I got rid of all of it. And that's what shifted me into this body acceptance journey.
Yeah, that's amazing. Intuitive Eating is a book by Elyse, Resch, and Evelyn Tribole, and we can link to it in the show notes, as well as some of the other books you mentioned, like Health at Every Size and whatnot, because they are kind of the foundation of what we're going to be talking about in our podcast. They're great resources. I always say when I read books or about any topic, I take what resonates with me. And when I mean resonate, I mean it's almost like my soul or my heart goes like, oh yeah, I've always known this. You know what I mean? And then I let go. If something doesn't resonate with me, I let it go. But I would say, majority of those books have resonated with me as well. Especially Intuitive Eating was one of the stepping stones for me to let go of my relationship with diet culture as well. So I totally, so we can link to those as well. They will be in the show notes. So
with that,
we are in the past. Go to you will be in the future. Yes.
With that said, do you want to get into your story?
Sure. I have honestly, we have some differences, but some similarities as well. And I think that's normal because we grew up in similar areas. We both grew up in the Greater Toronto area. We went to the same high school. We went to different elementary schools. But so it's kind of, I'm going to add that in because just as, context. So I'll do, my first disclaimer is a lot of my opinions as a younger person came from my parents as well. And I don't want to harp on my parents throughout this entire thing. So I'm just going to give a little disclaimer that I love my parents, and they had the same societal expectations that we all did. So they were just going off of what society told them as well. So I don't have any ill will towards them. Like, I've let that all go. You know what I mean?
They were doing the best that they could.
They were doing the best that they could with the information they had. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So since I was a kid, I was never, so before I hit puberty, I would say an average sized kid, but I was always I was short. And I remember, one of my earliest memories of not loving my body was when I told my mom I wanted to do dance. I think I was probably 8 or 9, and she told me that I don't have a dancer's body. And I remember that was the first time where I wished my body was something else. And then once I hit puberty, I started to get curves. Like, I have a big chest, I have big hips, I have what my family calls the Bentley thighs. Bentley is my maiden name. So, you know, and it was ingrained in my head that this is not what society wants you to look like. You have these traits, you know, this is what it is. And, yeah, and that really, I guess, impacted me growing up, you know, hearing that kind of stuff. It was almost like I believed I wasn't good enough for my family, for my parents, unless I was thin. And that was, and then that also reached out to exactly what you said, getting married and having a boyfriend. And it's like, I for a time believed that I wouldn't find love unless I was thin.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the catalyst. So I had been dieting on and off in high school. I remember I was on a diet where all I ate was crackers for every meal. And it worked. I lost weight. I remember I lost weight. This was in grade 9. And I remember there was a picture of me and I was wearing a belly top. And I remember being like, oh, I love my stomach in that picture because I was so thin, air quotes, because all I ate was crackers for like a month straight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like saltine crackers, like air, basically.
Yeah.
So that kind of started my dieting. But where I think my dieting turned into an eating disorder, or disordered eating was, when I was in my 20s, one of my friends got engaged and she asked me to be her maid of honor. And at the time I went dress shopping for dresses. And the other bridesmaids were in smaller bodies than me at the time. And I remember just not wanting to look fat, air quotes, in the pictures at her wedding. So I bought this, what I thought was an enormous dress size. And I was like, no, I'm going to make sure that when I come back to get it altered, like it has to be altered a lot and I'm going to be da-da-da. So I started off doing like a weird version of Atkins that I made up myself. But it completely spiraled into eating disorder behavior. Like in order to only eat a certain amount of carbs, I would eat 1 meal a day. I would just starve myself until dinner. I started, and then it was like that worked for a while, but then I like plateaued, as you said. Mm-hmm. And then I started actually using laxatives, abusing laxatives. So what that does is basically anything I would eat would go through me and my body wouldn't absorb it. And then so that actually, I took laxatives every day for probably over 5 years. Wow. But yeah, but that's when I started. And then as that year went on, I got smaller and smaller. And then it spiraled even more where I plateaued again. And basically I started throwing up after I would eat something. First, it was something I deemed unhealthy. Then it was once a day, and then it was up to 3 times a day. So as a result now, I actually have a very sensitive gag reflex so that if I cough too deeply, I actually throw up. So, and it's this a side effect of doing that for years. So that was the sad thing about that was doing all those disordered eating behavior worked. I went from probably a size 20 down to a size 2. Like it actually worked. But if you listen to all the things I was doing, so simultaneously, I'm making myself throw up while being on laxatives, while eating 1 meal a day. Like none of that is sustainable or healthy even, right?
But everyone will look at you and be like, oh, look at how much weight you've lost. You look so
I told
healthy.
everyone that it was my doctor. I remember in the middle of it, I had a doctor's appointment and she goes, well, you've definitely lost weight. Is this intentional? Is this, I remember her asking me like, are you like, basically, have you done this in a healthy way? And I lied to her and I said, yes. And I lied to everyone. I was just on Atkins or whatever, which is called keto now, which is BS. Sorry for the people who might be trying that, but we'll get into why we don't like that later. But
we can do a whole episode.
we can. But yeah, no, it was just a slippery slope for me. Like taking the actual diet aside, it was a slippery slope. So then what ended up changing was, and then ironically, it's like, when I was at my thinnest, I met the person who is now my current husband. But it's not like, oh, I got thin and then met my husband. There was actually a point in our relationship where we basically had to separate and spend some time apart. We still consider now ourselves together, but we weren't living together at the time. I was living with my parents. And what we both needed to do was do some growing up, do some self-discovery. What I needed to do during that time was learn how to love myself, because being in that full destructive mode, that full eating disorder mode, I wasn't in a place where I could adequately love him because I didn't love myself. And it was that time apart that made me realize, okay, I need to stop these behaviors. I need to, basically, I had a moment where I realized I had to learn to love myself before I could love anyone else, including him. I just like burst into tears because I realized all these things I was doing was not showing myself love. And then I had to change. So slowly but surely, I stopped making myself throw up, and then I gained a little bit of weight. Then I did this. Then I would start eating normally. I would make myself, okay, I should eat 3 meals a day, and then slowly but surely I got my energy back. I got, you know what I mean? Some of my happiness back. And then as I was showing my body love and loving myself, we got back together, and I was in a better place to be able to love him, and he was in a better place to be able to love me. And then the rest is history. We'll be together 10 years this December. So so that's kind of like a big thing about that. And the last thing I did was right before I got married, I said, I don't want to be taking laxatives. Like, I don't want to see myself in my wedding photos knowing I'm taking laxatives. So I stopped that before my wedding. And that was one of the last things I did. And then going forward, I tried my best to love myself. Fast forward, we got pregnant. I had a baby. And when I was pregnant, I was actually, you kind of have no choice but to listen to your body because of how brutal pregnancy is on it. So that was actually a really good learning experience for me to just be like, am I hungry right now? Yeah, okay, I think I'm a little hungry. Or like, am I full? Yeah, I'm full. I can't, because when you're full, like the baby takes up space in your stomach, right? So when you're full, you're full. Like, so it was very good. It was a very good learning experience for me. And then after I gave birth, I started to feel societal pressure from diet culture to, quote, bounce back.
Lose the baby weight.
Yes, exactly. Which I actually was probably the same size the day I gave birth, like after she was out of me, than the day I got pregnant. But of course, you have, like my stomach was not the same. My hips are not the same. Like, and I think that's my boobs are not the same. Like, it's like there's different things about you when you have a baby that, you're like, oh my gosh, my body is not what I remember it as or what it was before. Mm-hmm. And it was through that pressure to change that I realized I needed help. And so I reached out to a local eating disorder organization, and that's where I found my therapist. So before, and the reason why I did that is because I saw this going down a bad path, going down the path that I had been on before. And now I have a daughter who it's my responsibility to teach her things in the world, and I didn't want to teach her that. I didn't want her to be around that. So I was like, I need help. So I basically reached out. I found a therapist. I still see her to this day. It's been 4 years. I still see her weekly or bi-weekly, depending on how things are going. We talk about things other than eating disorder stuff, but I still it's still something that we talk about. And I honestly, like, you'll hear me say the eating disorder voice a lot on this podcast, but that's basically how we determine eating disorder thoughts versus non-eating disorder thoughts. Yeah. It's like the eating disorder voice. It's trying to come in. It's trying to, like, that's kind of what it is. It's always like the devil on your shoulder. It never fully goes away. It's quieted down a lot. And that's what helps through therapy, through regimented eating, through, and you could say regimented eating sort of goes against intuitive eating, but when you have an eating disorder, sometimes you just have to eat 3 meals a day because you have to eat 3 meals a day. Otherwise because you're so used to not doing it. Yeah. Right. So I kind of use intuitive eating when I need to, and I kind of use regimented eating when I need to make sure that I maintain a healthy lifestyle. So that's kind of my story. It's amazing. What bothers me, so I'll say 2 things. You would look at me now and never thought that I had an eating disorder. Because when you think of someone who has bulimia or anorexia or any of the ones, or any disordered eating, you think of someone very, very, very thin. Yeah. And I'm not. So I just like to put it out there that you never know what someone's been through. You never know what they've gone through. You can't tell that just by looking at them.
100%.
And I would just like to say that one of the reasons why I believe in body acceptance and I believe that bodies come in all shapes and sizes is because the only way that I can be the size that society expects me to be, i.e. thin, is by having an eating disorder. Yeah. That's the only way. I right now have a wonderful relationship with food. I have the healthiest relationship with food that I have ever had. And I am the size that I am. And I would be considered like mid-size to plus size, whatever. But like you know what I mean? Like if this is the size that my body, and I have been this size for years. I have been this size for the last 4 years. Like I have not, you know what I mean? Like, so if this is the size that my body wants to be, that's great. Yeah. I know deep in my heart that I have the best relationship with food that I've ever had, and that I am in a healthy place mentally, that I'm not engaging in eating disorder behavior. And that's what's really important to me. So, so I would just like to say that it's almost like I remember being a teenager and doing these crazy diets and going, maybe my body's just like not meant to be small. But then you hear all the societal stuff of like, no, da, 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 you know what I mean? Yep. And now thinking back on it, I think that was my intuition trying to stop me from heading into that destructive behavior, of eating disorder behavior. And that's, and it can be a slippery slope. So we say eating disorder behavior and disordered eating behavior. We say those terms because some people aren't formally diagnosed. Like I was formally diagnosed. And I wasn't. Some people weren't. So disordered eating behavior can be anything from starving yourself all day or eating only crackers for a month or you know what I mean?
Extreme
exercise. Yep. Yeah. So, so that's it. Like, it's one of those things where, it's really, so, it's just one of those things where, I think I would also like to point out, and not that this matters because it wouldn't if it was different, but in terms of a lot of people are going like, oh, but when you're bigger, cholesterol, the this and that, and your blood work and diabetes. And I can tell you that I just had blood work done recently, and the blood work part of my physical was everything was normal and healthy. So healthy. Basically, everything was in the normal range. So I don't really believe that necessarily either. Yeah. Like, they're correlational things, but not... Yeah. It's not a given.
Well, and I think, I forget if it was Intuitive Eating or In Health at Every Size, where they actually debunk all that.
That was Health at Every Size, where they did the Health at Every Size study, right?
Yeah, and they were saying, they were saying how society tells us that weight equals high cholesterol, it equals diabetes, it equals blah, 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 but it's actually been disproven. Yeah. And like, but the doctors get less nutrition study than they get anything else when they're in school. So like, everyone assumes what society assumes, and it just perpetuates this belief that is actually untrue.
Well, and yes, that's absolutely true. And doctors use outdated things all the time. The fact that they're still using the BMI, it's actually been proven that that's really wrong, outdated. It wasn't even invented by a doctor, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I believe it wasn't. I believe it was not even invented by a doctor. Or if they were not a doctor of nutrition or not specialized in it. And that's been disproven too, but yet it's still being used. Like, I remember even with my pregnancy, like when they were tracking, how far along I was like, no, like you're going off the fact that you think I have a 28-day cycle and I don't, like not even close. And I remember being so frustrated with them because they refused to believe anything else. And guess what? I was right, because I knew when I conceived my kid. So so it was just we believe in medicine, we believe in science, we believe in all of that, but we also have to take into account what doctors are taught, what they know, and where those ideas came from. Right.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. Yeah.
And like, if you look throughout history too, it's not always been normal for people to be thin.
No, it hasn't. And, I think I don't remember which book this was in, but they talked about how, like standards of beauty, for example, in the 1700s, it would have been the opposite. It would have been people with bigger bodies would have been seen as beautiful because they're the ones that are able to have the privilege of, you know what I mean? Like it's the stereotype that, if you're in a bigger body, you have the privilege of eating a lot. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're not working so hard outside. You're not, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's right either.
Right.
But
it's
like we need to get to a place where we accept that we accept all body sizes and they come in different shapes and sizes, and that health and body size are not necessarily, you can't look at a person and know their health status.
Exactly.
So and even a thin person, because when I was a size 2, I was not healthy. So and I feel like throwing up every day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's our whole point of this podcast.
That's our whole point. Yeah.
Is to encourage body neutrality, to accept. It's just accepting that.
So what does body neutrality mean to you, Bae?
Body neutrality to me means looking at bodies as facts, like as the same way I would look at a mountain or a creek, or it's just like, wow, that is, or wow, that's so beautiful, or everything.
So like taking emotion out of it.
Yeah,
sort of. Yeah.
Because society has conditioned us to look and judge. So I guess body neutrality would also be non-judgment and acceptance.
I love that. Yeah, I like the non-judgment because that's true, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's similar to, it's getting to a place where my body doesn't need to be anything for anyone else. It's just what it is, and accepting what it is. Like it for what it can do. Also looking at what it can do, like my body, yes, my stomach is different from then before I had my daughter. It hangs a little lower. But I birthed a human. I grew a freaking human. Like that's something that how come society doesn't appreciate that anymore? Because like that's a big task. So like it takes a long ass time, and it's a lot of work, and it's hard to, you know what I mean, to do that. So so I think like it's taking away the judgment, or more so almost like judging the things for the appropriate reasons. Like, it's like, look at what your body can do, not, you know, how it relates to society in its standard. You know what I mean? Look at it as a whole, not like how it relates to what society thinks about it. So, you know, I don't know if that makes sense, but...
Or, like, expecting your body to do something because someone else's body can do something.
Yes.
Because, like, going back to the pregnancy thing, some women can't have children. And
exactly.
so you can't expect your body to do it if your body can't. It's just...
It just can't. And you're just as much of a woman or of a person who... I mean, because trans people can have babies, so I will say, as a person, as you're much of the person that you want to be, your self-worth is not determined by your ability to have a child,
or what your body can or can't do,
what your body can or can't do, in general, exactly, even in terms of other things. All right, well, that was interesting. I don't know what happened to my computer there.
A little bit of a tech issue. It went on for 15 minutes. It didn't get recorded. Sorry, guys.
No, sorry. But we kind of know where we left off. So, yes. Is there anything that you wanted else to mention that we haven't mentioned?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in life, I personally feel like we should prioritize our happiness, because if we're not happy in life, what's the fucking point?
Yeah, I agree 100%. 100%. And if we're spending our lives trying to be a size that our body doesn't naturally want to be, then how happy are we really?
Exactly.
How happy is that really? How happy is that actually making us?
Yeah.
Because if you're in the throes of diet culture, you might be getting dopamine hits when you achieve certain goals, but overall, like, how fun is it really to be on an extreme diet? Like, really?
Yeah. And, like, when I was dieting, I was so hard on myself. And it's that voice that you have in the back of your mind that is always, like, telling you that you're not good enough. And that's no way to go through life and be happy and, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. No, it's important. I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said it. Like, it's what is the point of us being on this earth if we're not enjoying our lives?
Yes.
Like, we only have, I think you said it before, it might have been the other recording, but you only have this certain amount of time on this planet. Like, it should be used wisely. And when I say wisely, I mean in a way that makes, you know what I mean, that makes us feel joy, because I think that's part of who we are as human beings.
Yeah, and I am loving my life in a bigger body more so than I was in a smaller body.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm much happier now.
Yeah.
I have a healthier relationship with food now. I accept who I am and whatever size my body wants to be, it wants to be. And I can't, it's almost like I could change it, but it would require me to be unhappy to do so.
Exactly.
So it's not worth it.
Yeah. And our bodies do miraculous things for us every single day.
Absolutely.
And we should love, honor, and respect ourselves for being able to do that.
Absolutely.
Keeps us alive.
Yep. Absolutely. It keeps us alive. It fights off illnesses. It can do so much. Like, I mean, I'm at a loss for words with all the things it can do, but it can do a heck of a lot. So, I think that's really important, to mention. So if you haven't lately, dear listeners, pat your body on the back for being awesome.
Yes.
Even if you're going through stuff, even if you have health issues or things going on, pat your body on the back, because you're still alive and you're here.
Yes.
So it's gotten you this far. And I think that's something that we don't often do, is say, thank you, body, for being, for keeping me alive, giving me life.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We're so conditioned to criticize ourselves and not be grateful.
Constantly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's throw a little gratitude in there.
Yeah.
Like it's, and kind of fight the conditioning to be critical of our bodies. Let's be grateful for the the body we have. Again, it's our only one we have.
Yep.
So,
It's the only one we get.
Yeah, it is. So it deserves respect and love. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I guess on that, let's tell them what they can expect from our podcast going forward.
Yeah, going forward. So going forward, we have... So we're going to talk more next week on what body neutrality means. It's slightly different than body acceptance, I think, in both of our worlds, but we'll talk a bit about it. We can pull some resources from books, from definitions and whatnot, to really kind of get a sense what that means and how you can use body neutrality to your advantage when you're on your journey in your body. So I think that will be next week's, or I guess next episode. You might have already seen it dropped in your feed, but I love saying that, dropped in your feed. And then going forward, so episode 3, we're going to be talking about, we're calling it the Thanksgiving episode, and we're going to be talking about how... Yeah, Thanksgiving, how that has to do with body acceptance and neutrality and all the things that come along with going to Thanksgiving, comments maybe from family, pressure to eat a lot, and, that kind of thing.
The food holiday.
Yeah, the food holiday. It literally, and we were talking about this off mic, but literally it's the only holiday that revolves around food the way, yes, Christmas has food, but it's about depending on your beliefs, the birth of Christ or the, you know what I mean? Like it has separate meaning, but Thanksgiving is very food.
Literally,
related.
It's feasting.
Yeah, it's feasting. Yeah, exactly. So, I think it deserves some attention for sure.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go into, because we talk a lot about, we use the term in this episode a lot, diet culture. So what is diet culture? What does that mean? What does it mean for us, and how can we let go of it? And that'll be episode 4. And then episode 5, which is the last episode I'll talk about because I think that's enough teasers. Episode 5 will be how our family experiences in our past impacted us, and how impacted our, I guess, diet cultures and our relationship with diet culture, and also just like what we can do about it today and how we can detach from some of that. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the term generational healing, but that's kind of what I'm feeling with that episode. It'll be a lot of like letting go of generational trauma and moving on and adopting a new way of being that our ancestors didn't have. Like, and when I mean ancestors, I mean like, yes, exactly. Exactly. So that's what you can expect going forward. So we're going to really kind of jump ahead with that. I'm really excited about it. What about you?
Me too. And we really want to make these episodes informative, but also give you tools that you can implement right after listening or while listening if you pause it.
Yeah, this one was more like who we are and what experiences we have, because I kind of feel like we both wanted you to know why we feel we're able to talk about this topic.
We showed you our receipts.
So I think, exactly. So I feel like sharing with you our past really helped, can kind of see where we're coming from and our experience, and it puts it into context, because otherwise who are these women talking about what gives them the right to talk about this? Well, these are our experiences and what we've been through. So and I think that's
if that resonates with you, keep listening. And if not, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. And you know what I mean? That's a good point too. We're not for everyone, because everyone is in a different spot in their journey. And we're not for everyone, and that's totally okay. If we're not for you, we're not for you. And if you would disagree with what we're saying and you love diet culture, then by all means,
keep doing it.
Off and keep doing it. But where we're at, we're here to speak to the people who are fed up with it, who have had enough of it, who just want to love the body that they have and who want to get there. So that's who we're speaking to. So if any of that resonates with your heart, then we're so excited to have you as listeners.
So please reach out to us and connect with us.
Definitely.
We definitely want to be here as resources to help you along your journey.
Absolutely. And just to note, like, we're not perfect either. Like, we'll share, as we grow with this podcast, we'll share more personal stories and stuff like that. We're not, I never feel like I'm an expert in anything. I'm just living. I just want to share my experience. But that doesn't make me an expert.
Exactly.
It makes me just someone who's lived some of it. So
Yeah.
So with that, we're not doctors. We're not, you know what I mean? We're not nutritionists. We're not any of that. We're just two women who have been through hell and back with in terms of diet culture, and we've come out the other side feeling better than ever. So we think that that's kind of the way.
We want to inspire you to do it too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we want to be role models for younger generation.
Absolutely.
Because we didn't have them growing up.
Absolutely. Yeah. We talked about that as well off mic, is we wish we had this, like, I wish that this podcast already existed and we didn't have to make it.
Yeah.
I wish that I had listened to it growing up, or even just in my 20s. I wish it already existed. It doesn't exist. And that's something that's interesting. We tried to look for, domain names and stuff for our name, and tag names and whatnot. We couldn't find very much on body acceptance.
It was all available to us.
It was all available to us. That means there's not a lot of content out there with the terms body acceptance.
Yeah.
So
which is nice that it's available, but kind of sad that it's not more.
Right. It's kind of, exactly. It's like bittersweet. It's like nice that it's available and everything was easy to get our names and our name, body acceptance babes and whatnot. It was easy to get that. But then on the other hand, it was kind of sad because you're like, okay, but the world needs this. Like, this is, it needs more of this. And, so I guess we're blazing a trail in that sense too.
Yep.
So, yeah. That's exciting.
It is so exciting. We are so excited to be doing this, and it's been several months in the making, and we are full steam ahead.
Yay! Yes.
Well, I think we've hit all our points.
We have. So ends episode 1.
So ends episode 1. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Morgan.
Yes. Thank you, Bae.
And
we'll see you
in the next one.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Comment on social media to let us know what you think. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Body Acceptance Babes. Please join our Patreon for bonus content, behind-the-scenes access, and more.
If you or someone you love is struggling with an eating disorder or disordered eating behavior, you can get help in Canada from the National Eating Disorder Information Centre toll-free at 1-866-633-4220 or email nedic@uhn.ca. Or in the U.S., you can text or call the National Eating Disorder Association toll-free at 1-800-931-2237.